Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Think Fast, Click Smart, a guide to protecting your data online. In today's world, cyber threats are evolving rapidly and staying informed is our best defense. Whether you're managing your personal finances, storing sensitive data, or just trying to keep your online accounts secure, hopefully this webinar will provide you with some practical tools and insights to stay safe. We will also explore some of the latest online scams targeting Australians and how you can stay one step ahead, from phishing emails and fake login attempts to malicious QR codes. We'll guide you through the red flags and strategies to protect your personal and financial information online. Before we begin, a quick reminder that the information shared today is general in nature and does not constitute personal, financial, or product advice. Please seek professional guidance tailored to your individual circumstances before making any decisions. Just a little bit of housekeeping. To make sure we have a smooth experience, we'll keep all your microphones muted during the presentation. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to type them into the Q&A section. We'll address them during the Q&A segment at the end. The webinar is being recorded and will be shared with attendees afterwards. My name is Mark Bardzinski. I'm a director here at Apt Wealth Partners, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to this important session focused on protecting your digital life. It's also my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Jay Staal, CEO and founder of Destiny IT. Jay is a seasoned cybersecurity expert with years of experience helping businesses and individuals navigate the complex world of digital security. His insights today will be invaluable as we explore the true cost of scams, common threats, and how to build strong cyber hygiene. Today, we'll be giving you some information about the true cost of scams, what are some of the current scams to watch out for, some tips on password security, the importance of secondary verification such as multi-factor or two-factor authentication. We'll give you some insight into the cybersecurity here at Apt Wealth Partners. There'll also be some practical tips and key takeaways and some time for Q&A at the end. And with that, I will hand over to Jay. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you for that introduction. It's an honor and a privilege to speak to you and to everyone watching today around what I think is one of the most important subjects of the modern age is digital security and protection of your digital lives. I've been in this industry for almost 20 years now, and I've truly seen it change from the server-based approaches that we used to use when I started my career to the sophisticated cloud-based setups that we have today's businesses and in our modern lives. So to provide a bit of context on where we're standing as a country, there is still over $2 billion lost to cybercrime in recent years, a staggering amount. We've really pivoted from the single targeted hacker approach of 20 years ago to now dealing with sophisticated enterprise, which focuses solely on malicious activities online. It really is an industry, unfortunately. Now, 1 in 32 Australians unfortunately fall victim to cyber crimes, and the average loss per person is approximately $20,000. I'm sure many of us know somebody that was an unfortunate subject of a cyber crime and how it negatively affects them. The good signs here is that in the past 12 months, records are indicating that we are not only outperforming, but getting better at protecting ourselves by using things like multi-factor and talking openly around how to safeguard our interests. It is a cybercrime, and fighting cybercrime is a collective effort. So it is important, I think, to always have this as a conversation, whether it is with friends, family, or within business, to say, hey, this is a new thing that's come out recently. Don't fall for it. It's my objective today to help you to provide some context of the most regular ways that we see people getting hacked, and how you and your family can safeguard against it. Now, the absolute most common strategy today and age, over 90% of all breaches and hacks happen by a phishing link. Now, I'm sure many of us are familiar with it, but in case you're not, a phishing link is a malicious link that will get sent to you either via text, but most commonly via email, that pretends to be from a source that it's not actually from. So, for example, you may receive an email pretending to be from Australia Post saying that you've missed a package. Click here to find the status. So the email itself, while looking potentially like it is actually from Australia Post, will flick you over to a website, and that is a malicious website used to harvest any information that you're putting in that site. That malicious website can mimic the Australia Post website. So it is very important that when you're receiving email, that you're checking for the authenticity of the email by verifying the sender's domain. And when you are going to a website, verifying that it is actually the correct URL that you're landing on. Like I said, over 90% of all of these scams, phishing scams, originate via email. So if you're educating yourself on what to look for within these emails and checking, if you're not expecting a package and you're receiving an email from Australia Post, it's pretty safe to delete that immediately. Now, to make matters more complicated, we have something called multi-factor authentication, which I will go in great detail about later on in this segment. What hackers have been able to do, and what we've seen a lot of in the last 24 months, is if you think you're protected with multi-factor authentication and click on a phishing link, the multi-factor authenticator code that gets delivered via SMS to your mobile gets harvested if you put it into a malicious multi-factor authentication harvesting website online. So what does that mean? While multi-factor authentication is absolutely necessary, there are certain levels of multi-factor authentication that are stronger than others. And we'll get down into the nuts and the bolts of multi-factor authentication in a specific slide a little bit later. Those two are the most common vectors that we are seeing today that are causing breaches. Now, some of the others that we're still seeing quite frequently is the ATO impersonation scam. I had a call from the ATO actually just the other day. And because I get scam calls, this was a legitimate call from the ATO. I simply just let the gentleman on the other side of the line know that I'm not comfortable sharing any information with people that call me pretending to be the ATO, or whether they're the ATO, and to provide me with a case number. And then I went to the website and actually found the ATO number and called them back on an authenticated number. This is very similar to remote support scams. We're still seeing Microsoft impersonations, people getting phone calls stating that their computer is infected and access needs to be granted immediately, and I'm from Microsoft. Most of the time, especially, I don't think Microsoft is going to care too deeply about your personal computer being infected, and they certainly wouldn't be trying to help you out with that. With any of these scams, the common denominator there is that they try to manipulate a sense of urgency into this phone call and this phone conversation. And the big takeaway I want from this is, in these scenarios, you need to dispel the urgency, just calm yourself down and let them know that you're not willing to cooperate over the phone, and you need to contact them back on a number that you can find online that is an authenticated number. Now, specifically within business, once a phishing link has been used and somebody gains unauthorized access into the business, what we seem to notice is that the most common threat vector is for them to try to go into the invoicing and accounts section and change the invoicing details so that they can get paid instead of the business that has been compromised. So what's the key learning and takeaway from this common scam? If invoice numbers change, check and verify always. Most businesses will give you a courtesy phone call. Most businesses likely won't be changing their numbers, BSB numbers and account numbers all that frequently. If there is something untoward for an invoice that you're paying to somebody, or if it's the first invoice you're paying to somebody, check and verify, especially if it's a large amount. Just check and verify. Accounting people within businesses are always more than happy to take your phone call just to double check those numbers. And a very recent modern scam is the QR code scam. So we saw the big uptake of the QR code systems during COVID. We and our cybersecurity team has noted now that QR codes can also be used, of course, to send you through to malicious websites. So, we're no longer required to check in, but QR codes are prevalent in terms of information, or if you're at a restaurant or if you're at an event. One of the things, there is an event called DEF CON, which is a collaboration of cybersecurity experts, and one of the things they did in the year previous was they actually put a malicious QR code for everyone to check in, and they got pretty much everyone that attended that event. So how to prepare yourself for this? Same as when you're getting redirected to a website, when you're scanning a QR code, make sure by checking the URL that you are actually going to the source that you expect to go on. If you don't trust it, and with all of what I'm trying to tell you today, your instincts will play a very big part. If something seems off, just X out, close the tab, and move on. It's not worth taking the chance. And at restaurants, most of them allow you to make your booking at the counter anyway. So password security. The passwords make or break. They've certainly the bane of many people's existences. They have been there since the dawn of the internet as the primary way to protect you and your digital accounts online. Now, the use and requirements of passwords has changed a lot over time, but it is still the first layer of defense when it comes to protecting your digital assets. We are humans, and as humans, we don't have the ability to remember every single long password that we should use, unique password that we should use for online systems. And that's why many people are still, unfortunately, using just common elements of their lives, loved ones' names, pets' names, birthdays, or a combination of that as their password, and they're using that password for multiple online systems. So the issue there is, while it may not necessarily be you directly that gets breached, the unfortunate reality is that we live in a world where larger organizations do experience breaches, and these passwords, they get stolen from these corporates and published on the dark web and online. So giant lists of username and password combinations are out there for malicious actors to purchase and do with what they will. So as you understand, if you use the same password for every service that you use, as soon as one of these corporations or the password gets leaked, immediately all of the other services that you're using this password for are compromised. So that's why we in the security industry recommend to use a password manager. A password manager will allow you to have a single location to manage all of your passwords and to use that location to gain access to your online services and to create a catalog of your passwords. Using a password manager, best practice recommends for people to randomly generate a new strong password for every online service. Now that will mean that it's unlikely for you to remember those passwords because they should be minimum 12 characters long with a combination of uppercase, lowercase, letters, numbers, and symbols. The password manager will be responsible for storing it. And if you then want to use your computer or your phone to access an online source, it should pre-fill the password for you by detecting what website you're on and using the password manager on your phone and on your computer. It should act as a gateway for you to access your online resources. This website that I've included, haveibeenowned.com, that's owned with a P, P-W-N-E-D, is a database of all recorded data breaches for, I think, the last 15 years. It's a phenomenal amount of data in that database. And I often use this website to showcase to my clients that you may not know whether your credentials have ever been leaked or compromised. So if you are curious to see whether your Outlook or your Gmail or your business email address has ever been subject to a credential leak, I recommend going to that website, and it just showcases to you that that the information that you thought may be safe may be out there. Of course, if you are flagged and you are using the same password for all your services, but particularly for the servers that may be flagged by the website, please change your password right away. Good password hygiene. As soon as there's an event where you think, such as the latest Qantas breach, as soon as that information gets published, you have to assume that the password has been leaked and is now stored on the dark web. First point of call is to ensure that you reset that password for your Qantas account, and if you're using the same password for other services, then you'll be left resetting them as well. If that's for every service, that might be a very good moment for you to consider a password management service.
Jay, on your recommendation, I actually checked that website this morning and found that I've been breached 5 times, or well, not breached, but I've been the companies that I have passwords with have been breached, and so my email address and password have been, published on the dark web 5 times. Now, some of them are for very, reputable large corporations. So one of them was Twitter, one of them was Canva. So, there's been some sort of very big and high profile ones that if you're using the same password for everything, they've got access to pretty much everything that you would log into. So I think that's a very good call out there. So something I wasn't aware of. So thank you for that, Jay.
Yeah, and we rebranded my business 24 months ago, and my new email address is on 0 lists, but my old email address was on 14. And it's important to note that this is not my fault or your fault. It's the unfortunate reality is that these large companies, they get breached, and the data that gets taken out of those businesses, sometimes it will have, the hackers have the ability to steal credential information, and the website tries to give you a good indication of what type of information has been stolen, but certainly it's a good eye opener of how much data is actually out there on the dark web for malicious threat actors to use. One of the other things, sorry, Mark, one of the other things on the previous slide that I didn't get to was that a lot of online accounts have configurable security questions to use in case of account recovery. If you forget your passwords and you need to get access to an account, they typically will have these security questions. These security questions are very important, but also, like with most of security, can be a bit of a nuisance to think about. I just want to stress to the audience that if you have to put security questions in anywhere, our recommendation is always to ensure that these questions cannot be answered by public information. So, for example, if you're using your place of birth, and then on the top of your public Facebook page, it has, I was born in X, it's not a very secure security question. So when you are asked with these, you might think, okay, well, I just put some questions in that I can answer later. Please think that the threat actor should not be able to acquire this information through my public knowledge. By all, social media, by all its purpose, is a wonderful platform. I recommend going into the settings and making that as private as you possibly can. Multi-factor authentication is the second layer of defense after we use our password. Passwords being the first layer of authentication. Multi-factor authentication is a second step, second method of verification that you are who you say we are. It's a security code for your house. It's very much trying to give you the impression when you're accessing your online accounts that you're in one of those Hollywood movies, and it's got a bank vault with multiple layers. First is a door you've got to open like this, then it's a biometrics. So in security, we try to use as many layers as possible and make it as difficult as possible for the threat actor in the hope that they just give up. Multi-factor is an essential component, and I can't stress enough on how essential it is for you to, if it is available, enable it for every account possible. A reason for being is that, as we could see in the previous slide, it's highly likely that it's not going to be your fault, but your password is going to be compromised. Multi-factor authentication, even if the password is compromised, will add that critical second layer, SMS verification, multi-factor authentication app, for you to say, yes, I grant access to this account, or yes, I am who I say I am, therefore I can access the online source. In the event that you get a message, an SMS message or an authentication message pop up, and you're not trying to log into that service, you can guarantee that somebody's managed to get your password. At that point in time, it should be a trigger for you to say, hey, that wasn't me. I'm not going to authorize that, and I'm going to log in and change my password right away. Now, why do we prefer authentication apps over SMS? Well, going back to the first slide, SMS messages can now be harvested. And if you are phished and put that SMS in, you are effectively granting the hacker access to the online account for a period of time. The multi-factor authentication you get through the authenticator apps are more secure in the sense that they are more phishing resistant and less likely to get harvested. Now, for me, I like to put as many barriers as possible between the threat actors and myself. So geolocational fencing can be applied on modern apps to further protect your accounts and online information. For example, unless I'm traveling, I go into my CommBank app and I turn all of the international settings off. There is no reason for me to have those switched on unless I'm overseas. Unfortunately, most online systems do not have that off by default. It's sometimes an available setting. And this geolocational fencing we use a lot in the cybersecurity industry to really reduce the threat vectors from the rest of the world, and basically say, well, if only Australia can access it, that adds another layer and locks out the vast majority of the world population from being able to access those accounts. So my philosophy is, if MFA is, if the account has the option to have MFA, regardless of what the account is for, you might say, well, you know, my Gmail or my Outlook account doesn't, it's just a little bit of personal email. That personal email address might be the recovery email for more important services. So if it has MFA, please enable it, and please make sure, if the account does not offer MFA, well, arguably you should be talking to the provider and getting them to turn it on. Okay, moving on to some really practical tips to safeguard your information while you're abroad or while you're here. We all love device updates, said nobody ever. However, they are important. You know, you might get a critical operating system update, or an application that you're using that needs an update. Within the business sector, we have very strict timeframes that we must install security patches by. That's recommended to us by the Australia Essential 8 framework, 24-hour period here at my organizations to push through these security updates. Now, why do we do this? When a system update is presented to you, sometimes it can be a usability update, but more often than not, it's actually to fix a critical vulnerability that already sits within the software that you're using, something that the developers have identified can be used maliciously and can be exploited by threat actors. So when you get an update popping up on your phone or on your desktop, and it says, oh, the system needs to update, try and get it done as swiftly as you possibly can. Overnight is typically a good time, just so that the vulnerabilities that have been identified are addressed. So public Wi-Fi, especially when we're going out traveling, but sometimes also when you're down the road at a local cafe, you know, public Wi-Fi systems are inherently insecure. They can facilitate something called a man-in-the-middle attack. They're often not monitored. They're not safeguarded. So I would advise significant caution against using these, specifically without, you know, a VPN or another way to encrypt your data and protect yourself. A man-in-the-middle attack, or using public Wi-Fi, especially using unencrypted services, you know, if you're using a text message, sending a text message over public Wi-Fi, text messages typically can be an unencrypted service. They can quite easily decipher what's being sent. So, you know, just want to give some caution, especially when you're traveling. I certainly know when I'm traveling, you know, roaming is not that expensive these days, and I prefer to keep my data running through my own connections. A VPN would be a good way if you're abroad for a long time to do that as well, and to safeguard yourself. And the last practical tip, yeah, so like I said, most threat actors will give you a window of time to act. It's very, very urgent. Please do this now, or you will get financial penalties, or you're about to win a prize, or you know, if it's too good to be true, if it seems fishy, if it feels not right, just look for an official number and contact them, or remove the email itself. Most of these times it's junk and not to be regarded as anything of note.
That's very good advice, Jay. I just got a call on my mobile last week saying that I needed to act quickly because my bank account had been hacked and the bank needed me to transfer the money out of that account into another account. Now, the bank will never make that call to you. So, you know, I knew that that was a scam straight away, but they were doing exactly that thing about that sense of urgency, that there was going to be an impact if you didn't act. And then, you know, also from a position of authority too is quite often what they seem to do, is that position of authority. You know, the tax office, the bank, these sorts of things, places you would normally trust. So, but they're not really from there. So
exactly right, Mark. And in my experience, you know, when the ATO contacted me or when Microsoft contacts me, they understand. They understand that there are malicious actors out there imitating them. And I just simply and politely tell them, I'm sorry, I can't, you know, continue this conversation over the phone. I don't provide any information when people contact me, and I will contact an official number and pick it up from there.
I might talk about Apt, what we do here at Apt for a little while. So Apt Wealth Partners demonstrates strong cybersecurity leadership through regular executive meetings to stay ahead of threats. We have a zero tolerance policy on cyber risks. We use advanced protections like single sign-on. A dedicated security operations team monitors threats around the clock. Cybersecurity is a standing agenda at every board meeting we have. We reflect a proactive and comprehensive security culture. In addition, we run monthly cybersecurity training for all of our staff and complete regular security tests. A little bit about what we do on the client side. One of our first rules at Apt is we try and keep sensitive documentation out of the email environment. So when sharing information, we safeguard client information by encrypting all personal data and storing it in a secure online portal, likened to a digital safe deposit box. Access logs track who views the documents and when, ensuring transparency and accountability in handling sensitive client data. In addition, we implement access restrictions to the information. By that, I mean that only the people required to have access to perform their role have access to the information. If we do need to share information by email, this is always password protected, and if necessary, the password is shared via a secondary method and not by the same email address. This effectively ensures that we have multi-factor authentication on those communications. And just as a note, something that I've noticed seems to be widespread across financial firms in Australia, we do not use our client's date of birth for the password. And Jay, I might hand back to you for your key takeaways.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much, Mark. And my experience at Apt's always led the pack when it comes to their cybersecurity standards. And that's important, exactly where we want to be. So the key takeaways today, don't act on spam calls, emails, or texts. Don't act on the urgency. Trust your instincts. Call people back. Can't stress, phishing is still the most used tactic to breach your accounts. So therefore, strong passwords and MFA, everything. If you have an online account today and you don't have multi-factor on it, typically every online service, big online service, whether it's your Facebook all the way through to your Gmail, multi-factor authentication, and preferably using an authentication app. We have to assume in this day and age, our passwords are going to be leaked. It's an unfortunate reality, but the best way to protect yourself against that would be to use a password manager and to have your passwords randomly generated and unique for each and every service that you use online. If you do get a notification that a platform you're using has been breached, go in and ensure that you've changed that password. Just like physical security, digital security works best in layers. So just a quick recap on that. Strong, randomly generated passwords protected by hopefully an authenticator app, but at least some form of multi-factor authentication, potentially geolocation blocking, are all good layers for an individual to use to make it as hard as possible for a threat actor to get into your environment.
Jay, we've had lots of questions come through. Are you okay if I just fire some questions at you?
Of course.
Okay, there's a good one here about I'll ask. It relates to is the Apple password secure? The Apple Password Manager secure? And then I'll add to that. Well, I'll add one on to that. Is what about the same thing about Google? If you're using Apple or Google to manage your passwords, could you do that as your password manager?
Yes, certainly. So it's important to note that the companies that are building these platforms are forever improving it. The Apple Password Management solution, as well as the Google Password Management solutions, they all use high-end encryption to encrypt the passwords. And both of them are better than not having a password manager at all. Apple specifically because it tends to integrate into all of your different devices and connect into your Safari for home use would be a great password management tool to use. With the Google Password Manager, I have personally seen that because it stores it in that Google account, and I suppose the same would be true for your Apple ID. Make sure that that account that you're storing the passwords in has maximum protection, has a long generated password or a passphrase, and is protected by multi-factor. We've seen some scenarios where people were using the Google Chrome password manager. It's not very difficult to find where those passwords are stored, and they can be exported quite easily. So the password management account that you're using to have all your passwords in, make sure that you protect that and make it Fort Knox.
Good advice. This is along the same lines. If you just need one password to access a password manager that then contains all your passwords, is that not putting you more at risk?
Great question. Yes, so it could if you make that password a very weak password, and if you don't have multi-factor authentication set up via an authenticator app. That's why we recommend the use of a passphrase for your with services like LastPass or 1Password. They call that your master password. If you use something like a passphrase, which you should be able to remember, and make it long enough so that it can't be hacked via a brute force, that's typically 12 to 16 characters. A passphrase could be something like a sentence, like Mary had a little lamb, with spaces and then using symbols at the end. Something that is kind of memorable, but real long instead of just a simple password. That would be recommended to use for your master password. Then if you protect it via multi-factor authentication and add that additional layer, and most password managers will allow you to configure some sort of geolocation or blocking. You've got 3 layers there that would make it very difficult for it to be breached.
And we don't want everybody to go out and use Mary Had a Little Lamb now, because now we'll have 100 people with the same password. So everybody can make up their own one. Along the same lines, what if sites such as LastPass are hacked?
Yeah, and it does happen, unfortunately. It's important to know kind of like the architecture of what a password vault will look like. Even though the vendor might be breached, doesn't necessarily mean that your vault is breached. For most password management system, the encryption of your vault is done on the individual vault, and a lot of them use what's called a zero trust principle, which means that not even the provider has the storage of that information. It is a transaction that is between you and your vault alone. That's why some providers are unable to recover passwords, and that's why a recovery system for your password management solution is very important. What we recommend doing as well is the recovery method to gain access into your password vault. It may be a good to store a recovery method in your family safe, for instance, and print that off. We don't usually recommend for people to print off any passwords, but a recovery password to gain access into a password vault, folded up in an envelope and put into the family safe, would be a very good way of dealing with all of your sensitive and online information. And sometimes that's also used as an emergency break glass way to get into somebody's digital ecosystem, because so much of our lives these days are online.
Very good. Another one along the same lines. How can you nominate someone to be able to access password managers like LastPass if someone were to pass away or fall into dementia? Would that be the same way that you've just suggested there, Jay?
Yeah, so there's multiple ways that you can do it. If you're looking at LastPass or password management tools, I'm not familiar with Apple Password Manager or whether they do this. They do offer a way to share credentials within the structure. So you could have it set up that critical credentials might be shared. But yes, certainly, going through, especially when you're talking about a scenario where you might be the primary custodian of the online banking accounts for the family, I think it's quite important to have that conversation of what if, and how your family can gain access to some of these accounts through a recovery method or through a stored password in that family vault, or a pre-arranged process that is followed outside of sharing passwords or having an established process in place. You always typically have the recover my password option through most online services, though that doesn't work for every service online.
Yeah, and I might just share, it depends on everybody's individual circumstances, but I personally have a family account for my password manager, and I share key login details with my wife, so we both can access the key details, and does the same with me. So
yeah, and it's important to note there, Mark, is that the tighter you are with your cybersecurity, the more you're going to be dependent on the multi-factor authentication codes to gain access to the accounts online. So part of the process may be to share the PIN to your iPhone or to your authentication methods with a loved one. So when they are in a situation where they urgently need to have access to certain information, they have the required training to get there.
Right. Now, some of the questions we may actually answer offline because they're very specific, but I'm going to try and add in a few more here. Is facial recognition an acceptable password?
Yes, for sure. Facial recognition is biometrics. Facial recognition, I think, are up there to use as at least multi-factor style authentication. I mean, there could be an argument made that people can print off or show a picture of somebody. The facial recognition systems that are built into modern phones are pretty accurate, and certainly from cybersecurity best practices still used within corporate today.
Now, there's been quite a few questions on the same subject. How do you get a good VPN? What is a VPN and how do you create one? Can you share more about VPNs? What's a good one to get?
Okay, so what I will do is I'll have to take that one on note. We use our corporate VPN structure, and that's the structure that I'm used to. These are managed VPNs by my business and by all the other businesses that we manage. I know that there are the VPN services that you can sign up to, like Surfshark and NordVPN. Which is the best one though? I'm not going to be able to give my recommendation on. I will do some research and provide that in context after this call.
So what we can do is, as part of our response to the webinar, we'll put out a question and answer for that. So, could you give an example of an app to set a multi-factor authentication?
Oh, I'm very happy about that question because I forgot to do that while I was chatting. For sure. The one that I use on my app is called Authy. It is based on the Google Authenticator system, but also has a very handy backup feature. So I would recommend that for personal use. There are a myriad of different authenticator apps available to you. Microsoft Authenticator is available. If you have an Outlook account, that might be a good one to use because it also provides that backup feature. Google Authenticator, LastPass has their own authentication suite. I know for my Macquarie Bank, it uses its own authenticator style app. So my recommendations would be between Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator or Authy. That's AUTHY.
Perfect. How do we control what multi-factor authentication is used for a particular account? If I'm logging into an account and they send me an SMS with an MFA code, how do I change this to using an MFA app?
Great question. So most of the security settings would be configured within the account, and most online services, if you log in and then go to your profile options and go to security, it will typically have listed what is available for you to use. If it's somewhat of a sophisticated service, it will try and steer you down the route of using an authenticator, with perhaps only using an SMS verification as a backup. So most typically, it would be within the profile options.
I'm not sure if you can answer this one, Jay, but I'll ask it anyway. Is Norton's password vault secure?
Yeah, I don't have enough information on that, unfortunately, Mark. I haven't looked at any of Norton's product range in quite a few years now, so I don't actually know any of the architecture they use. You know, important when you're reviewing your password vault structure, that you're looking at the type of encryption that's being used, and more importantly, that it has that zero trust concept. The zero trust concept is very important because if something does happen with the company, you know, they're not storing all of the keys to unlock the encryption on their servers. So that's an important step of the protection.
One question, we haven't mentioned having antivirus software as a level of security. Why is that?
Yes, so firstly, because it's the premise of the presentation was primarily safeguarding your online accounts, but of course, antivirus software is still required on most machinery. We certainly, as part of our security solutions for businesses, have the Windows Defender as part of our security stack, which is then monitored by our Security Operations Center. In terms of the threat landscape, yes, you're totally correct. There is still threats of ransomware. There are still threats of viruses, but the landscape has changed a little, and it's not quite as prevalent as it used to be. What we're noticing as well is that inbuilt antivirus tools like Defender, which was 10 years ago would have been a laughing stock of an application to use, is now through billions and billions and billions of Microsoft's investment, one of the best to use in terms of protecting you from viruses. So great question. Yes, it's still there. For anyone that ever has an issue on their computer, something not behaving as intended, it's always my recommendation specifically for Windows, but this also applies for Mac. There's a program called Malwarebytes. They have a free software, one of the best to scan your device for any nasties. It's completely free for home use. That would be my recommendation, to have that one on your computer. And if you're in any doubt, just run a scan with Malwarebytes and it will tell you whether you're okay or not.
Right. And we'll probably just leave the final two questions now, and then we'll finish up. An interesting one here. I'm about to upgrade my phone, and my IT consultant suggested avoiding Android phones like Samsung and to switch to Apple. Can you comment?
Yeah. Yes. Look, there is some merit to that way of thinking. You have to understand that Apple is a closed platform. Everything that's developed must be authorized by Apple. That's not to say that they are completely free of any security incidents. They're not Apple and Mac OS. They have also capacities for vulnerabilities. But the main difference between the two, and the main difference between Apple and Windows to some degree, is on Android, developers have a lot more freedom when it comes to the development and creation of the apps. And inherently, uploading that to the App Store without scrutiny can lead, of course, in less security. Now, in the business sense, I myself use an Android phone, and we apply encryption policies on the apps and manage and monitor the information through company policies. And that is very secure. We are following Microsoft's best practices there. Do I believe that Android is inherently less secure than iOS? I don't think so. I mean, you would have to push the boundaries and do some silly things on an Android to get it to a state that it is infected. However, as you probably know, if you ask this question, there are antivirus services that run on Android, which are not required for iOS. So, if you are often on your phone browsing areas of the internet that could lead you to a virus, companies like Avast, also Malwarebytes, there's a paid version. There are antivirus agents and apps designed to further protect your Android phone. So yeah, very, very good question. It is a very different in design of the platform, and iOS is closed. Android is an open platform. In terms of business, if you've got a good cloud solution and your IT consultant knows how to set things up, you can secure both platforms quite easily.
Great, thanks. And the final question, Jay. Phone apps seem to be easier to use. For instance, I can enter my Macquarie accounts with my 4-number password. Is that exposed, therefore? If we don't have the detail, what we can do is we can take that offline with that, because if we don't have enough information to answer that, I'll wait for your answer, Jay.
No, that's it's a great question. Also with Macquarie, of course, they will allow you to gain access to the account using a 4-digit PIN. That PIN is specific to the login on that device. What I would recommend you do as well, if you have the ability, is to further improve that to a biometric style login through the Macquarie based app, and then of course it has its multi-factor. Device pins and device multi-factor should not be confused with the typical passwords that are required to maybe reset up that application or service. So they have recognized that a quick biometrics to gain access to the account on that device is sufficient.
Great. Fantastic.
And if you are worried, of course, that taking the assumption there that your phone, locking your phone, keeping your phone locked These run our lives these days. So, make sure you've got your phone set up so that it auto locks, and make sure that you're aware and keeping your phone safe. My phone will automatically erase itself if it gets too many login inputs, because I've got so many sensitive bits that run through that. And I would recommend that you make sure that your phone is set up so that it automatically locks, and it's difficult. Don't make the passcode 1234 to get into your phone as well, please.
Good advice. Thank you very much, Jay, for those fantastic insights, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. Cybersecurity is not just a technical issue, it's a personal one, and we hope you are leaving today with some practical strategies to protect yourself and your data. If you have any further questions or would like any tailored advice, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at Apt Wealth Partners. Stay safe online, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks for having me.